So on my vlogging clipboard for future video topics, I found a link. I clicked on it. Then it took me to a tweet from back in 2018 that goes, compared with their own mothers, American women today are 50% more likely to die in childbirth. Now, keep in mind that this is before COVID. And honestly, this is me just being slow at getting around to some of my topics. This is a Harvard article, and it goes, a soaring maternal mortality rate. What does it mean to you? And of course, some of the comments were kind of brutal, and I'm not gonna front. I kind of agree with some of the brutal comments. I'm going to give you what the article says, and then you can draw your own conclusions. This was allegedly updated. It goes, a new guideline from the WHO aims to help reduce steadily rising rates of cesarean sections around the globe. While crucial at times for medical reasons, cesarean births are associated with short-term and long health risks for women and babies that may extend for years. Me personally, I don't imagine that I would recur to a cesarean. I can't imagine a circumstance in which I could be convinced for such a thing, because I know that my mom delivered naturally. So if she was able to do it, why the fuck wouldn't I be able to do it? But I guess in order for that to happen, I would have to understand what leads to a cesarean in the first place. But sometimes I'm just shocked when I hear that a lot of women are in labor for like 16 hours, 20 hours. My mom had my brother in about 10 minutes, and she had me in like 7 minutes. And she always describes it as pretty much spitting us out. It's like she went and there we were. Then I asked her, so what did you do? And she said, I think that part of the reason is that women tend to panic. Giving birth does not hurt. All you gotta do is relax, and your body will tell you what to do. But if you start panicking and tensing yourself up, that's what will lead to complications. And when I think about it, it makes sense, because anytime I'm coming down with something, when I don't allow for the stress of what it's doing to me to take over me, I realize that I can pretty much get over anything much faster and with less pain too. That's part of the reason why my periods aren't so bad either. When they used to be really bad, I used to be extra stressed out, and I would allow for the fact that it's bad to stress me out. But once I learned to just calm myself and go through it relaxed, I feel much better. So who's to say that giving birth is just us being detached with the whole process, and when we get around to it, we just don't know how to handle it? So anyway, that's just a quick side note there. This is saying that in June of 2018, when Serena Williams had her baby, allegedly she nearly died after giving birth. And then Beyonce also shared a story of how she developed a life-threatening pregnancy condition called preeclampsia, which can lead to seizures and strokes. So this is happening to women who are supposed to have access to the best of the best in healthcare. So what hope would that leave us average people, right? A professor who studies safety in pregnancy explains that what the harrowing stories indicate about the health systems, public policies, society at large. This is going to now define maternal mortality. It's pretty much deaths that occur due to complications of pregnancy or childbirth, or within 6 weeks after giving birth. The statistics show that in 1990, about 17 maternal deaths were recorded for every 100,000 pregnant women in the US. And while relatively rare, the number has been rising steadily over the last 25 years. So now, since this was 2018, we gotta add an extra 5 years to that. And remember, this doesn't mention COVID, because COVID wasn't a thing around the time this was posted. In 2015, 26 deaths were recorded per 100,000 women. This means that compared with their own mothers, American women today are 50% more likely to die in childbirth, and the risk is consistently 3 to 4 times higher for Black women than white women, irrespective of income or education. For every death, pregnancy-related conditions such as high blood pressure or blood clotting disorders result in up to 100 severe injuries. For every severe injury, tens of thousands of women suffer from inadequately treated physical or mental illnesses, as well as the broader disempowerment mothers face in the absence of paid parental leave policies and other social support. Are these statistics misleading? The root cause is often misunderstood. Very few deaths counted in maternal mortality statistics occur during childbirth. Rather, they happen in the weeks and months before or after birth. They represent many failures, not just unsafe medical care, but also eroding social support necessary for women to recognize medical warning signs like abnormal bleeding or hopelessness about the future and to seek timely care. So these deaths are occurring outside the hospital, not within the hospital. They're happening in the communities. American women are sent home from the hospital just a few days after having a baby, infant in hand. More often than not, mother and family are left on their own until a cursory 15-minute visit with a healthcare provider several weeks later. During long gaps between checkups, mothers experience deep worry for their infants. They struggled with rapidly accelerated responsibilities, extreme sleep deprivation, and relentless pressure to return to work. And I can't believe that given those facts, there are motherfuckers out there trying to get me to have a kid. No. It's almost like sending you to a death trap, all while recovering from pregnancy and adjusting to parenthood, a transition that marks one of life's greatest physiological endurance tests. Too often, this experience is isolating, disempowering, and morally dangerous, and over time, these risks are getting increasingly severe. What can we do to help? Undoubtedly, clinicians and hospitals can do more to ensure the safety of women giving birth. They can issue health guidelines and run simulations to better prepare to handle emergencies. Policymakers can do more too, including tracking maternal mortality so that failures like delays in life-saving care can be identified and fixed. Yeah, such as making healthcare fucking accessible and not a financial ruin ticket. Start there. Moms can do more to take care of themselves, including eating well and exercising to stay healthy. The challenge, of course, is that most new moms are exhausted because motherhood is exhausting, and in general, society expects moms to put themselves last in order to put their families first. A major responsibility to address the well being of mothers actually lies with the rest of us. If rising maternal mortality is fundamentally a failure of social support, we all need to step up. Birth partners, grandparents, friends, neighbors, professional colleagues, all of us. All people are vulnerable during the period surrounding the birth of their child, but in the United States, we forget to advocate for ourselves and for each other. We need to listen to moms and we need to support them. After distilling all the data and reading all the headlines, I believe saving their lives is as simple as that. I can agree with the conclusion to that article, but, as nice as that sounds, as kind as that sounds, and again, I agree with it, if you as an individual yourself are not getting supported and you're having trouble getting by yourself, why would you put yourself in a position where you make yourself even more vulnerable than you already are to support someone else? So, what I'm trying to say with that is you deciding to become a parent equals you know that this is going to put you in a vulnerable position. If you are in a vulnerable position, you cannot expect for other people who don't have a lot for themselves to begin with to put themselves in a vulnerable position, aggravate their own vulnerability to support you. It sounds selfish, don't get me wrong, but me personally, in my current status, there's no way that I could support someone in my immediate social circle if they asked me to. Maybe the most I could do for them would be if I get off at a certain time and your kid happens to be like on the way home for me, maybe I could pick them up and drop them off in your direction. But when it comes to support, what does it look like to support someone? Because if you're telling me that to support you, I have to stick my hand into my pocket and possibly drain from my own personal time, what do you think I'm doing during my own personal time? During my own personal time, I gotta heal, I gotta rest, I gotta recover, I got side things that are important to me that I gotta maintain so that I can maintain myself a little better to make up for the areas in my life in which I lack support, such as my job not giving me support and shit, you know? I get it. Trust me, I know. You shouldn't inherently be expected to be catered to just because you just became a mom. Sorry that you made a decision in which you made yourself vulnerable, right? But telling me that this is about the future generation and how this is important, you don't have to convince me that that's important. I get it. What would I get out of it? I gotta think selfishly because it's just not fair that in an effort for me to take care of myself and to help myself advance, I'm going to be expected to be involved in the community that's pushing me down or keeping me down. Let's read some of the comments that were left on Twitter about this article. Someone says, one of the interesting and frankly obvious shifts in women's health between my mother's generation and mine is shift in the obstetric workforce from men to being overwhelmingly made up of white women. So when are we going to talk about the racist elephant in the room? Why are we dying in the hands of white feminists and having more interventions done on us than ever? Hard to believe I would be better off in the hands of Bob than Becky, but it seems a conversation worth having. White women have had 20 plus years dominating the profession. Hashtag what are you doing? I have no comment. The article suggests women have less social support than before. With all eyes on screen, our society is becoming more isolated. The pregnant women, let's all show them support. And then someone replied to that saying they need paid support from the healthcare system depending on families, friends, and communities to provide it creates an inequality of care. Not everyone has a personal support network. See, in a sense, that's kind of expressing the thoughts that I just shared a second ago. What if you belong to a community that's already a community of nothing? Do you think America is unusual in our all eyes on screens problem? Or do you think Canada, Japan, and European nations where presumably this problem of an increase in maternal mortality has not occurred are also addicted to their phones, tablets, etc.? Someone goes, are we sure it's not because their mothers are less likely to get pregnant? And then someone replies with a laughing emoji. And then someone goes, less likely to get pregnant? Please elaborate. And they never elaborated. We are also significantly less likely to have kids because of school loans and the unrelenting attacks on healthcare insurance access. Fascist oligarchies aren't great for families. I have to agree. And then this is one that's brutal, but I have to say, I agree. Is waiting longer and getting fatter before giving birth will do that. And it's just true. When you're getting older, your body simply is not going to function the same as it would have when you're younger. Shit, me personally, sometimes I find it hard to get my fat ass off a chair, sometimes without making noise or without hearing how much calcium I need up in my bones from all the cracking that my joints be making, cracking and popping sounds, you know? And on the note of getting fatter, we gotta admit that that is a problem. Some of us are on extremes. It's either you don't eat, you're either very devoted to fitness, or you don't do any of that at all. And you're just living a life of excess when it comes to food. I think that the real problem in this country is we have problem with balance. It's either we're spending too much time sedentary, too much time active, say overworking because we like to hit overtime and get paid more and we want money, stuff like that. When can we have a life of balance? What does balance in a community look like? Because sometimes I try to think about that and I cannot imagine it myself because I've never lived in a community that lives with an example of balance. It's always been people who are overworked, people who are over consumers, or people who are too ill or something, just something hindering. This has more to do with increase in obesity when entering pregnancy. We can make more unhealthy women pregnant than before, so there will be more complications. Let's see what replies those kinds of tweets got. Libertarian policies like deregulating the food and sugar industries are partially to blame for America's obesity rates. I have to agree with that. I have always said that things like coffee and sugar consumption should be regulated. At the same time, it makes so much money that we wouldn't feel encouraged to do away with that, even if our health is literally riding on it. Also, I don't want my government controlling me. When we think of solutions, we want the government to have something to do with it, but then we counter that by saying, I don't want my government all over my personal business. So is this an issue of government trust? Or is it an issue of you being cynical? Or is this an issue of we want the solution, but we don't want to put the work into it because it requires trust? As opposed to maybe giving someone the chance to earn your trust, we would rather just go without it to not risk having our trust broken. I don't know, it doesn't make sense. That's not the reason so many women get no prenatal care whatsoever. That's entirely because of our shit healthcare system. Our healthcare system is shit. I agree. In Canada, my spouse's hospital labor and delivery, including a midwife's assistance, were completely covered by our public healthcare system. More importantly, after birth, the hospital ensured that she and the baby had regular visits with doctors and nurses. Yeah, that sounds like a utopia, especially coming from a citizen from the most powerful nation in the world. I guess we are powerful militarily, but everything else, we got work to do. Because they are waiting much longer to have children, choosing to spend their prime child rearing, I guess he means bearing, years devoted to their careers, the older the mother, the greater the risk for her as well as the child. Well, men also, although you guys do a little better in your older years, y'all are dropping the ball too if you wait long to have kids because y'all's sperm is not very good past a certain age as well. So, like, come on. If you're gonna talk trash about women, which I get it, this is about women, you gotta talk trash about yourself too. So, for instance, children with older fathers are at greater risk for certain disorders, specifically autism and attention deficit. And that comes from healthline.com. Does older sperm cause autism? But you know what I'm saying? You guys ain't like completely free from any burden if you're older yourself. And then there's also the aspect that I'm disappointed wasn't really broadened in the article or really anybody tweeting about it. But one of the things that I like to think about when I think of pregnancy is the fact that giving birth is a traumatic experience. Not psychologically speaking, I'm talking about the body. Like, you know how when you get hit, that's called trauma in medical terms, a blow. Giving birth is a physically traumatic experience because you have this baby pushing through, rearranging your organs, and the contractions, the pressure. Babies sometimes get tangled on shit, and you may end up hurt. Not all deliveries are going to be the same. My brother, when my mom was carrying him, he ended up getting tangled somehow in one of her ribs. And that shit was incredibly painful. I don't need her to describe that that was painful because I can imagine that shit. Even if we wanted to go back to work, it's just not the best thing to do. Like, we should be allowed to just lay back for an entire year if necessary. And that way we can be there for our child and be there for ourselves. And that's the kind of shit that makes me be like, if I'm having a kid, I don't care how, but you better ensure that I don't have to set foot on a job for at least a year or preferably ever again. You know, that is just not something that this place believes in. So why would I believe in having a kid in this place? And it may sound exaggerated, but like I've said before, if you want a healthy kid, then the mother has to be healthy too. I cannot be healthy if I have to be scrambling between my professional life, my personal life, and my child's life too. If you want me to be that mother who's going to be devoted to the kid, then you have to facilitate me being able to be devoted. But if you're not going to, then fuck having a kid. Ugh, they disgust me. The thought of having a child disgusts me. Well, there you guys have it. That's it from me. Thank you so much for tuning in. As you have observed, my opinion on children and mothering and all that has remained pretty consistent. I cannot imagine a life in which that changes, but I like to discuss these topics because who knows, maybe I get hit in the head hard enough and something happens in me and something changes and I end up changing my mind about all this, but it doesn't seem likely, especially the direction that this country is trying to go. And although this is a 5-year-old article, my sentiment remains the same.